Heard to the stand?
Aa, Amber Heard geliyormuş.
Amber Laura.
Amber Heard geliyor. Aman olay.
I do.
Bir saniye ben hemen pilav atıp geliyorum.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name
Yes, it's Amber Laura Heard.
and what is your address?
I live in Yucca Valley, California.
And how old are you, Amber?
I am 36. I just celebrated.
Okay. And do you have a daughter?
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's 1.
Okay. And what is your profession?
I am an actor, mostly.
Okay. Now, why are you here?
I am here because my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote.
And how do you feel about that?
Bu arada Oped I wrote dediği için sıçtı büyük ihtimalle.
I struggle to have the words. I struggle to find the words to describe how painful this is.
Ne kadar acı olduğunu söyleyemem bile.
This
Kelimeler
is
bulamıyorum
horrible
bile.
for me to sit here for weeks and relive everything.
Her şeyi tekrar yaşamak çok kötü.
Hear people that I knew, some well, some not. My ex-husband, with whom I shared a life. Speak about our lives in the way that they have. This is the most painful and difficult thing I've ever gone through.
Yaptığım veya yaşadığım en kötü şey bu diyor.
Now,
Bir de
there
git yatağa
was
sıç.
a trial in the UK in
Bir de git
July
yatağa
of
sıç istersen.
2020 where Mr. Depp had sued the Sun newspaper and Dan Wooten. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Yapıldı mı abi
What
o?
was your level of participation in that lawsuit, in that trial?
Well, I was not party to that lawsuit. I was a witness. I suppose the primary
2020'de
witness, since it dealt with the truth
şeye
of
gazeteye
the
dava
relationship,
açmış.
that I
Sana
shared
dava
with
açmış
Johnny.
Johnny Depp.
And what, if any, role did you have to play with respect to, for example, witness statements and testifying?
Objection, compound.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I had to write, I think I gave 7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination. And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do.
7 kere şey vermiş.
Thank you, Amber.
Yemin altında
I'm going to
açıklama
take you
vermiş.
back, and if you can just tell the jury a little bit about your background.
Sen ne
Tell us
muhakkak
where you
14 milyar
grew up.
biliyorsun canımsın. En iyi abonem sana
I
hoş
come from
geldin.
Austin, Texas, a small town outside of Austin that you probably haven't heard of. No one has. It's called Manor.
Maynard diye bir
I
yerden
was
gelmiş.
raised by my mother and my father, and I grew up with a little sister, although I have a big sister as well.
Hem
And your
küçük
little
kardeşi
sister's
hem büyük
name
kardeşi
is,
varmış.
Her name is Whit.
Küçük
Heard.
kardeşi
How much of an
Whit'miş.
age difference is there between the two of you?
Whitney and I are about 1 year. I think we're 16 months apart, so right next to each other.
And what did your father
Riske
do for a
attığı
living?
şeye şimdi baktım.
My father broke horses and did construction. Had
Hayatta kalmak için abi.
And
En tane doğru çok zor.
hunted
6.
and
için
fished,
canımsın.
but that was
En iyi
for fun.
abonem sana hoş geldin.
And what did your mom do?
Amber Heard'mış galiba.
she worked for the state of Texas.
Let me just, since you talked about the breaking horses, can you just tell the jury
Bu
what
bilgiler
your
önemli
role
mi?
is in assisting your dad on
Jüriye
that?
kendisini
What
sevdirmek
is
için
involved
bu
in
tür
breaking
sorular
horses?
soruyor. Mesela
Objection, leading.
can you just tell me about?
Overruled.
Yani olabildiğince günlük hayatından,
Just gotta stay
hayatının
on,
ne kadar
basically.
güzel olduğunun böyle hani bilmem ne hani
I would help him. I was more
güzel
of
hani
a crash test
empati
dummy, you know,
yaptırmaya
with a horse.
çalışıyorlar jüriye şu
It's a
anda.
wild animal. It doesn't necessarily like to be.
Tabii. Johnny Depp'in evet kendi
And,
Crash köyüne saldırmışlar. O yüzden şu anda ona
people
odaklı.
there, who are crazy enough, like my dad, to pick that as a profession, I guess. And he was really good with horses, and I was the son he never had. So
Çok çok
it was my job
acilmiş.
to, you know,
Acilen
stay
defans
on.
gönderin.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your father about
Mahsuller falan
react
çöp şu
to the
anda.
horses?
Well, with training horses, I guess the key things are.
Turan çok
not
37
show
milyar
fear,
için canımsın. En iyi abonem sana hoş geldin. Shapeshifter çok
Not
16 için
intimidated,
canımsın.
not show
En iyi
fear.
abonem sana hoş geldin.
be tough and calm.
Bak at olayını şuraya
Tell the jury a
bağladılar.
little bit about
Atan,
your
atan
educational background during those
at eğitiminde
growing
ne
up years
öğrenilir?
and your work experience.
İntimate korkma
I
onlardan.
worked any job that I could. From the time
Dik
I
dur
was very young.
sakin ol filan onu
wanted
bağlıyorlar.
to
Oradan bağlıyorlar.
get out of
Oradan
Texas and
hani
do
Johnny
something
Depp
with
de
my
böyle
life and
saldırgan o
see
yüzden
things and do
korkmuyordum
things.
şeye geri çekilmiyordum
So
mu
I was in
yediriyorlar.
school and really pushed myself to.
Krefaksiyonu 18 milyar milyon için bu arada. Fox için
I
19
just
milyar
always pushed
canımsın.
myself
En iyi abonem sana hoş
to
geldin.
be able to accelerate the process. I wanted to, you know, get out of school as fast as I could, and I wanted to do more things with my life than stay in Texas.
So what types of things, so where did you go to school when you were younger?
I was a scholarship kid at a Catholic school growing up, several different Catholic schools, but they were always in the other, you know, on the other side of town, in the wealthier
Katolik okuluna
part of
gitmiş.
town. And I grew up quite working class, and thankfully with, you know, as long as I maintained an A average,
Bursluymuş.
I enjoyed the benefit of a scholarship, and I did that until I realized that I could take my GED and SATs early, and I did that and placed out of school and
Birkaç
effectively
farklı
left
Katolik
school,
okuluna geçmiş, evet.
16 years old, I believe.
And what did you do for work during those younger
Evet, Johnny Depp
years?
hiç Karayip Korsanları izlemediği
I
için
took
şimdi
any job
yakalamaya
that I
çalışıyor
could. I
filmleri.
worked at my father's construction company, sometimes, you know, just administrative stuff. I mean, it was a small company. But I answered phones, and I worked at a modeling agency that was also, you know, offered photography classes, makeup classes, hair and makeup classes for people that were pursuing a career in entertainment. And I started
Göz kontrolü koymaktan fazla mı kaçıyor?
taking
Emre tam fazla.
classes
Full göz
that I
teması kuruyor.
paid for by working there,
Sağa
effectively
bakmasının
as a trade.
sebebi daha sonra
And I
ekranda sola
eventually
bakıyor.
worked there long enough to be able to pay for my headshots, which
jüriler
are
orada.
the pictures that you use in the industry
Jürileri
to
konuşuyor.
promote yourself, you know, in whatever, acting, modeling, or both.
And what, if any, charitable work did you do when you were still young?
It started off as a requirement for the school I went to, and then I liked it so much, I think, because it meant I wasn't at home, and it was important to me is just to not spend time at home. And I
Niye bu kadar
really-
çok çalışıyordun filan dedi.
I really
Evde
loved
çok olma.
meeting people, so I worked at the soup kitchen every morning before school, during the school year, for about 4 years. I didn't go on weekends, but on weekends I would do
Charitable work
various
yapıyormuş.
things,
Yardım
worked at children's,
kuruluşlarına gidiyormuş. İşte
children's museums,
evsizlere,
typically, so
şeylere,
I would work
aç
with
olanlara
younger
yemek verilen
volunteers.
yerlere gidiyormuş. Bunu niye yapıyorsun?
And
Evde
mostly
olmadığım için mutlu
soup
oluyordum.
kitchens
Evde
and
olmamaya
things
çalışıyordum.
involving children. I worked at the with deaf kids for a while, and
Sağ çocuklara şey
yeah,
yaptım.
I love it.
And
Çok seviyorum
when you
diyor.
worked
Halk
with
adamı.
deaf kids, what, if anything, did you do to learn to be able to work with them?
Objection leading and 404. And relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Well, I taught myself how to sign basic, sign language, and then
Basit bir şekilde işaret dilini
I
biliyormuş.
proceeded. I audited a translate a course at the community college, which I ended up going to get out of
Akılcı
high
güvercin
school
çok
early,
güzel 11 milyar milyon
later
canımsın.
on. But I
En iyi
would
haberler
audit
sana hoş geldin.
classes. The teachers never wanted to kick the random 12-year-old out of their class, I suppose. So I remarkably was able to audit. I think the majority.
Büyük
of
ihtimalle
two
avukatları
semesters.
Johnny Depp'e bakma
That's
demişler.
also helped me learn.
Johnny Depp kasti izlemiyor.
So how did you end up
Tepki
in
vermemek
Los
için.
Angeles?
Çünkü bu tür tepkiler falan da çok değiştiriyor. Jüri
I
görüyor bunları.
I did a small job in Texas where I played a part in a movie, and the actor in the movie that I was playing opposite had an agent visiting him from LA, and I met her on set, and she said that she had heard about me from another bit
Nasıl
part I
aktörlüğe
did.
başladım
I
falan
was
diye
taking
kısmına
jobs in
geldi.
Austin
Bir tane
for
filmde oynuyormuş.
really anything, to be an
Karşısındaki
extra, to
oynayan
apply my- I
adamın
did makeup
veya kadının
once.
ajansın menajeri gelmiş.
no
O
job
şey
was
yapmış.
too small or for me, so I put myself out there, and she had heard about me, and she said, I have heard about you in this town, and I'd love to meet you in LA if you're ever out in LA. And I was like, when can I come? And she made an appointment with me for the following week, and I used all but $180 or something to get out there, and I landed. I didn't know anyone. I was 17.
O ilişkide Los Angeles'a gitmiş. $180 varmış.
I've effectively been there ever since, I suppose.
So when you arrived in Hollywood, please tell the jury what you did to get moving there, get going.
I went to every audition, every casting, every meeting, every appointment that I could. I put myself out there. I didn't have a car because those were expensive. So I took the bus around LA. It was before
Arabası
smartphones.
yokmuş.
I had a
Otobüs
Tom's
kullanıyormuş.
guide in my bag and a change of tank tops. Not that it mattered, but I went to about 10 auditions sometimes a day. And
Günde
would change
10 tane
clothes I needed to in
şeye
back,
gidiyormuş.
the bus I was taking, and I just
Film testine falan
hustled from
gidiyormuş.
one audition to the other. And I got a bit part on one thing, and then I got a bit part on another thing, and then eventually my roles kind of became more important or bigger, and
Sam pek çözmüş oluyor. Johnny Depp bir şeyler çiziyor. Mahkemede çizim resim olarak NFT satacak, $100 milyon öyle ödeyecek. Let's go.
Or doing, larger roles in movies that no one would see.
Mahmut çok teşekkür ederim 20. ay için canımsın. En iyi haber sana hoş
So
geldin.
I'm going to ask you to go from 2002
Peglos
to
çok çok 26 milyar
2009.
vermiş.
If you could just
Canımsın. En iyi haber
describe
sana
for
hoş
the jury
geldin.
a little bit what types of parts you had.
Hangi tür işleri aldığını
They've
söyleyebilir misin diyor.
indicated they didn't. You have not been well known here in this courtroom compared to Mr. Depp. So perhaps just take them through a little bit.
2002'den 2009'a
That's
kadar
fair.
hangi işleri aldın diyor.
I did small roles in big
Küçük roller
films,
yaptım.
like
Büyük filmlerde küçük işleri aldım.
Zombieland and
Zombieland'de. Zombieland'de mi oynamış
Pineapple
lan?
Express.
Pineapple Express'te.
Movies that were well known.
İyi
My
bilinen
first one was Friday
filmlerde.
Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights'da
But
şey
again, I
yapmışım.
had small roles in those bigger films, and then I would do larger roles in kind of smaller films. Like
Küçük filmlerde büyük roller oynuyormuş.
I did a project where I was the lead in a John Carpenter film, and he came out of retirement to do that.
Şimdi John
And that's
Carpenter'da
kind of
küçük bir film değil.
how it was in terms of my career for those that first initial 10 years or so. It was just going from slightly bigger role to slightly bigger role, and just working my butt off.
So I'm going to take you up to 2008. Did there come a time that you auditioned for The Rum Diary?
Yes,
Ram Değeri diye bir tane filme
I auditioned for that in
şeye
about
gitmiş.
2008, I believe.
Please describe for the
Testine
jury
gitmiş.
your experience
Audition
in
değil ki böyle.
auditioning for The Rum Diary.
Well, I auditioned a few times, which is common in my work.
Deneme
you
çekimi.
get a callback,
Deneme
as
çekimine
they say.
gitmişti
And
Ram Diary
I
filmde.
think I had at least
Geri
one, maybe two
çağırmışlar.
callbacks
2 kere geri
with
çağırmışlar.
the director, and then
Direktörle.
I got a call saying that Johnny, who at the time was I think I knew that he was producing it as well.
Prodüsörü de o filmin Ram Dayan'ın prodüsörü şeymiş.
Something
Johnny
very
Depp'miş.
personal to him. He was reprising his role as his late friend Hunter S. Thompson, and it was a very important project to him, and that he
Kendisi
wanted
çok
to
önemli
meet me in
projeymiş.
person.
Emerald'la tanışmak istemiş.
I thought I would be going for maybe an audition, but it was just a meeting. I went to his office and met with him for a few hours.
And what did you talk about during those few hours?
We talked about books.
Kitaplar
and
hakkında
music,
konuşmuşlar. Müzik hakkında konuşmuşlar.
Poetry.
Şiir hakkında
We liked
konuşmuşlar.
a lot of the same.
Aynı şeyleri
We liked
seviyorlarmış.
a lot of the same stuff. You know, obscure writers and interesting books.
Şiir olayını abartı buldum.
Pieces of poetry that I haven't heard anybody else reference or know or like, and he was very well read and charismatic, and
Öyle şiir.
I think I left the office
En
with a
sevdiğim
few books that
şiiri
he gave
Twitter'dan
me, and
okuyayım. Anama
we spent the whole time
küfretmişler.
just talking about things that we care about, and I was so surprised that somebody, I knew who he was. I wasn't
Kim olduğunu
familiar,
biliyordum.
I wasn't a fan of his work. I wasn't familiar with him, but I knew who he was.
Kim
he's
olduğunu biliyordum
one of
ama
the most
fanı
famous
değildim
people in the
yani.
world. So
Diyor.
it was already a weird thing to go and get called into his office, and I'm a no-name actor. I was 22, I think, and I thought it was unusual. It was weird because he was twice my age, and he's this world
Yaşım
famous
olarak iki
actor,
katı-
and here we
iki
are getting
katıydı.
along about obscure books and
Kitaplar
weird,
üzerine falan anlaşıyoruz falan diyor.
old blues, and we just
Okan Gündüz çok sormadı 27 milyon
it was.
için.
I
Aramıza
thought
hoş
it was
geldin.
remarkable. I just hadn't really. I thought it was unusual and remarkable. I left there just feeling like, wow.
So did there come a time that you learned that you were going to be cast for the role in the Rum Diary?
Yes, a few days later,
Birkaç gün
my
sonra
agent said that Johnny was
menajeri-
going to call you. We gave him your phone number.
Johnny seni arayacak demiş.
Okay. And shortly after, my phone rings. I pick it up and I hear, this like deep voice on the other line, and he said, "You got the, you're
Rol
it,
almış.
kid. You're the dream. Hunter wrote this part, and you're the dream. You're it, kid." I was like,
And
amazed.
please describe for the jury what that means. What was the Rum Diary and this Hunter Thompson? What was the concept here, and what role were you playing?
Well, it was
Rolü
my
neydi onu anlatsana falan diyor.
understanding that he was bringing to life his late friend, and what he told me was that this character is supposed to be the dream woman, like the dream, American dream, and
Galiba
So I
Johnny
knew
Depp
what
o
he
filmde
meant. He
ölmüş bir
indicated
arkadaşını
me
canlandırıyormuş. Onun da
when he
hayali
got the role,
kadınıymış.
that I was that, that I was the dream kid. That's what he said.
So did there come a time that you started filming the Rum Diary?
Yes, I'm not quite sure how much. I think we started filming in maybe March of 2009.
2009'un Mart'ında şey yapmışlar.
We shot it in Puerto Rico.
Porto Rico'da çekmişler filmi.
And describe, if you can, the events of the filming and your interactions with Mr. Depp during that time.
It was a bit surreal,
Çok bir-
filming in a place like Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico'da
It
bir
was
şey yapmak çok güzel bir yer diyor.
It takes place in the 50s. So
50'lerde geçiyor
everything
film.
really looked beautiful. Cars and clothing,
Kıyafetler,
music.
arabalar,
It was
müzikler
just-
hepsi vintage,
it was a
güzel,
very colorful,
çok renkli bir
shoot in general.
çekimdi.
I couldn't have asked for a better scenario. I was on film. I mean, I was on set, reading my books, and occasionally Johnny would talk to me, and then he started to be really. There'd be this big SUV pull up, and
32
a security
GB nasıl bitti lan?
guard would kind of usher me into this car, and it would have the AC blasting.
Bana
And I'd be
yedik.
sitting in the back of the SUV, just thinking what a strange experience the whole thing was. And, we didn't really have a whole lot of interaction on set until we did a scene that involved kissing. We had a kissing scene, and
Öpüşmüşler. Now kiss.
it
Öpüşene kadar
didn't
çok
feel like a normal. It didn't feel like a normal scene anymore. It felt more real. There are certain things that you do in the job to be professional, like when you have to do that sort of scene, and you don't like you don't use your tongue if you can avoid it. There's certain things that you do to just maintain a certain line, and it just felt like those lines were blurred. I mean, he grabbed my face and pulled me into him and really kissed me.
Öpüşme
But we were
sahnelerinde
filming a scene.
öpüşme sahne
Yes.
Okay. Did your birthday, did you celebrate
öpüşme
your
sahnesi
birthday
vardı. O
while you were
sahneye
in
kadar
Puerto
hiç
Rico?
böyle interaksiyonumuz yoktu. Öpüşme
I did.
sahnesinde normal
Celebrated.
profesyonel şey gibi hissettirmiyordu. Yani ikimiz de
Third
öpüştük.
birthday.
Normalde dil mil kullanılmaz.
what if
Haşır
anything
huşur
that Mr.
girdik.
Depp'in
Diller konuşmuş. Bunlar aman diye girmiş.
We were already kind of talking about books and poetry and
Yapmışlar.
things like that. He gave me a few really beautiful poetry books, and he gave me a bicycle. Like a vintage bicycle, because at the time I was riding around
Johnny Depp de
on
şu
a
anda
bike,
klan
and
savaşında
I
kurtardı
had a
bütün
lot of
herkes
time off since I
arkadaşlar.
was a
Haberiniz
small
olsun.
role in the movie.
Şu anda mesajı geldi.
And yeah, I think that was it.
Okay.
Klan savaşını
Now,
kazanmışlar.
did there come a time that
Evet,
you
3
ended up
yıldız.
visiting him in his trailer?
Yes, I think there was we would hang out if, after or in between scenes or in between setups, we often were, talking about things and would continue the conversation into the trailer, often with the director, Bruce Robinson was his name. And then at one point we talk about wine. It's another thing that Johnny and I shared in common, a love for
Trailerında
wine.
şeylerinde
And
çekim
we were
zamanında
talking
gidip kendi
about,
trailerına gidiyormuş. John Depp'in
kind
trailerına
of wine
gidiyormuş.
that
Orada
I enjoyed, and I was
konuşuyorlarmış.
going on
Genellikle
about
direktör
how
de
great
oluyormuş
this
ama bazen
bargain
olmuyormuş.
wine
İşte
was.
şaraplar hakkında konuşuyorlarmış. Şaraplar da ortak şeylerinden birisi.
How much more sophisticated Johnny's taste in wine was.
Şarap
so I was going on
şey
about
diyor,
the
şarap
virtues of
konusunda çok
Malbec or
bilgisizdim,
something, and I
fakir,
brought him a bottle
köpek öldüren alıyordum, daha
of this
kaliteli
wine.
şeyleri gösterdi diyor.
And I set it down, and at some point I'm going back to get back to set, and he kind
Yemin
of
ediyorum 5 dakika
kicked
Türkiye'ye
his,
koy,
like,
iptaller.
foot up in the air and basically kind of lifted the back
5
of my
dakika.
bathrobe up, and
Can I just stop you there? Why were you wearing a bathrobe?
Valencia
because I
çok
was
16
doing a
yaşında canımsın.
scene,
En iyi haber abi,
it was
sana hoş
a
geldin.
period film, so it took place in the 50s, and so I had all of this old undergarments that are for that time era.
Niye bornozdaydın diye sorusu
And the scene
geldi.
involved
Bornozda
me
olmamın
changing.
sebebi şey yüzünden.
So I had all the costume on.
Paso kostüm
And
değiştirdiği için
Picked up the back of my robe with his boot, and I kind of turned around and giggled,
şey yapıyormuş işte bornoz.
I
Sonra
wasn't- I
Johnny
didn't
abim
feel-
hamle yapmış.
I just
Bornozu
didn't-
ayağıyla
I
kaldırmaya
didn't
çalışmış.
know what to make of it at the time, and I just kind of giggled and
Yapmış.
batted
Johnny
her
abim
away
de
playfully, and
hızlıymış.
he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious, and he said yum, and he kind of lifted up his eyebrows like that,
Sonra yam demiş.
and I
Çok kötü bir
giggled,
porno izliyormuşum gibi
laughed it off,
dinliyorum
kind of
şu
batted him
anda.
away, and moved on, went back to set.
And were you in a relationship at that time?
O kadar kötü bir senaryo
Was
ki.
Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. And did anything else of significant happen during that time period? while you were
Ben
filming
utanıyorum şu anda yani.
Other than what you've told us.
We just had this, it was a friendship, flirtatious thing. I felt chemistry. I felt this other thing that was
Daha
that
ne
went
Tanrı'ya
beyond the
sıçsın
pale of
sorusu
my
gelmedi.
job,
O yarın
for
gelir büyük
sure.
ihtimalle.
Johnny clearly felt that way about me, had indicated to me that that's how he felt in many different ways, but at the same time, you know, we were both in relationships.
Kamera
and
dondu.
it is a job.
Ya
and,
oğlum Amerika
you know,
Amerika davasında kaç milyon dolarlık
kind of intimidated and
ya benim yayınımda kamera donmuyor.
Nervous about that, and I also was in a relationship, so
No cam chat'e yazalım.
I didn't hear from him for a long time.
And that's, so approximately how long were you filming in Puerto Rico for the Rum Diary?
A few months is my best
All right,
guess.
and when you left Puerto Rico and the
Chat bir
filming,
$5
when's the
verin.
next
Cam
time
GG yazacağım.
that you had any
Başlatacağım.
contact from Mr. Depp? And contact could include anything, communications, written communications, as well as telephone or otherwise.
We had no contact
CBS
until
devam ediyor.
Johnny called me on the phone one day,
açayım.
and I was driving, and he invited me over to his home in California, in Beverly Hills. We didn't really speak. But the first time was the only time I actually spoke to him, and he invited me over to his house under.
Yandaki gelince şey
said
yapacağım.
that, you know, we could get Bruce,
Ulan.
who was the director. But the first time was the only time I actually spoke to him, and he invited me over to his house under kind of the. He said that, you know, we could get Bruce, who was the director, to come over, something about the movie, but it was clearly not about the movie, if you know what I mean. It was. So I said, I said my friends are in town, and I'm busy with that, and kind of hung up, feeling really startled, you know, that didn't know what else to do.
What if any gifts did Mr. Depp send you during?
Burada da şey diyor, işle alakalı konuşmamız lazım filan da diyor ama işle alakalı olmadığını biliyordum filan diyor.
Gifts. He sent me a beautiful dress, one that I wore in the movie.
Hediyeler filan göndermiş.
With a beautiful handwritten note, said happy wrapping, and made a reference to the dress being wrapping paper. He sent me a few gorgeous, expensive, what I can only assume are expensive, collectible books, items. And then when I was away filming on a different job, he did send me some guitars.
Gitarlar
I know one
göndermiş.
delivery. I was informed about one delivery, and my partner at the time intercepted the attempt to deliver and called me immediately and said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Send it back," and she did. And she indicated that there was another one that had already previously attempted delivery, and it was also rejected. I sent it back because I wasn't there and I wouldn't have accepted it anyway.
O zaman başka bir kadınla evliydi
Did there come a
Emre.
time that you ended up having to go on a press tour for the Rum Diary?
I got a call for the Rum Diary press tour in the fall of 2011.
So that's close to 2.5 years after you filmed?
I'm an actress, not a mathematician for a reason. Roughly, yes.
Okay. And could you please describe for the jury what a press tour is? Just explain.
Press tur nedir
You
anlatır
take
mısınız filan diyor.
a movie once it's completed, and if it doesn't have distribution,
Yemeği geldi.
as part
Yemeği
of
de
the
yapamadım bu
promotion
arada
of
kendim.
that
Ne de
movie,
yapalım,
you
anlatacağım
go to these various places, normally cities like London or New York, and you do press events in those cities to kind of promote the film, and you go to place talking about the film.
And so you were then called to participate in the press tour for the Rum Diary?
Yes, I had just finished going through the process of separation with my former partner, and I was moving and going through that, and I got a phone call saying, "Remember that movie you did in Puerto Rico? Well, they want you for the press tour." And I said, well, perfect timing. And we did that, I think late October 2011.
Okay. So describe for the jury your interactions with Mr. Depp during the press tour.
Well, on the first stop, the beginning of the tour was Los Angeles, where we both lived, and we did a press day, normal press day, and then at the end of it, I was invited by Johnny to come up to his room to have a drink with him and the director of the film. And I went up to the room to see both him
Pilav
and Bruce.
yapacaktım. Şeyi bulamadım. Pilavı
As soon
yıkadığın
as I got
zımbırtının
there, Johnny
ismi
said
neydi?
Bruce wasn't going to make it. So I stayed. Johnny and I started talking. He asked me about my relationship. I
Süzgeci
said,
bulamadım.
you know,
Eleği bulamadım.
going through it.
Daha sonra yani
I'm going through
evden
the separation
elek nasıl,
right
süzgeç
now,
nasıl
and
çalındı
it's been,
anlamadım.
rough couple of months, but that's normal. And he said, well, that's same with me. You know, it's been, I can't remember exactly how long he said it had
Süzgeç
been,
kayıp
but
yani.
he had split from the mother of his kids and said that he
Tencerede
understood.
yıkayıp hallederdim. Halledebilirdim. Ya yayında olmasam onu yapabilirdim. Dediğinizi yapabilirdim.
Then we drank
Yayında
red
olduğum
wine
için yapamadım
and
onları.
continued to talk.
Hızlı olsun istedim.
And the talking became us, you know, reconnect. You know, it was like reconnection was almost instant. It was just chemistry. It's hard to explain that, but we sat on the couch and we talked, and
Yan ekranı ha.
you know, it felt like there
Ben
was.
gittim. Geleceğim.
It felt like there was an
Arada
electricity
çevireceğim ha.
to the room, and it's how I felt when I was alone with him anyway, and it was instant again. I
Çok
was
güzel
like, whoa.
hissediyordum böyle bir çekim vardı aramızda diyor.
On the couch, we talked, finished some wine,
Koltuk
and
diyor.
then I got up
Şarap
and
diyor.
left. And as I went
Gitmiş.
to leave,
Tam giderken
he grabbed both sides of my face,
suratımın
similar
iki
to what he
tarafını
did
almış. Çekim sırasında gibi.
in Puerto Rico when we
Evet,
were
yine
filming
kötü porno
that
filmine geri
scene.
döndük.
And he kissed me, and I
Öpmüş.
kissed him back.
O da geri öpmüş.
And what happened next with respect to any relationship with Mr. Depp?
Sonra ne oldu ilişkisinde?
We fell in love.
Buna aşık olduk
We
diyor.
went on this press tour,
Basın turuna
and
çıktık.
we went. It was a beautiful and strange time. You know, we were flying from one, not together, but you know, going from one city to the next, Europe, New York, Los Angeles, as I said, and we're just traveling around talking about this movie that we did together, that we participated in together, and we were falling in love. I mean, it was just, you know, at the first dinner in London, he sat me next to me. You know, he produced the film and was a part of controlling the film and was responsible for different things than I was as an actor having a small part in it. And we went on this press tour, and I think in London he had me sat next to him at a dinner, and then we ended up spending the night together in my hotel room. And for the rest of the press tour, it was on. I'll put it that way.
All right. And how long approximately did the press tour go?
Şeyi ne kadar kaç dakika kaç
I don't know
şey
exactly
sürdü?
how long it lasted. I think, you know, there were
Basın turu.
press engagements in this city for a few days, and then another city for a few days, and then there was a break, and then there was another press opportunity, I believe. So it was kind of spread out over maybe a month, if I'm guessing.
Bir ay kadar.
So
diyor.
when you returned to Los Angeles, what, if anything, took place with any relationship with Mr. Depp?
Los Angeles'a geri döndüğünde ne oldu?
Well, once we were back from the press tour, you know, we had this, you know, whirlwind romance kind of just in these like beautiful places all over, and we're falling in love and not able to really show it because the world didn't know about the split between he and his former partner. And of course, as a woman, I was like, is that troubling? You know, and I'd ask him, no, you know, he swore to me that they hadn't even shared a bed for a year, and that they were protecting the kids and not
Partnerler Johnny Depp önceki karısından ayrıldığını presse daha söylemediği için gizlemişler.
Not a little bit. We had to
Biraz.
be really under the radar, because as Johnny pointed out, that the world would blame me and call me a homewrecker, even though I had nothing to do with it. So we were secretly dating, and then, you know, it was beautiful. it was, I felt like this man knew me and saw me in a way that no one else had. I felt he understood me. I felt he understood where I came from. I felt that, like, when I was around Johnny, I felt like the most beautiful person in the whole world. You know, it made me feel like $1 million. And
milyon demişken kendisi 100 milyon
that
istiyor.
kind of feeling where, you know, he's just
Kendimi çok güzel hissediyordum falan
lavish
diyor
gifts and
şeydeyken.
lavish expressions of love, and how he had never met a woman like me. I mean, I remember he took the foil off of this bottle and put it on my ring finger, and I had only been with him like days, you know, or maybe it was weeks
Johnny
at the
abim de
time.
yerim
Yeah,
de
it was
bütün
probably
ne
about
kadar
a few
cheesy
weeks,
hareket
but
varsa
it just felt
yapmış.
very intense. But we weren't
Gitmiş
doing
şarap
normal life stuff. We
bardağındaki
weren't, like,
tepesindeki,
stuck in
tabii ben
traffic
bilmiyorum,
with
Utan
each other. We
söylüyor.
weren't going to the grocery store and
Hani
doing
şey olur
life.
ya
We were, like,
böyle plastik
hiding in
değil.
these places around the
Alüminyum
world.
bir parça.
He has so
O
many
kısmı
homes.
alıp
And so we'd be in one of those homes, or
şey
my
yapmış,
home at the
yüzük
time,
şeklinde yapmış.
it would be like a
Mantar
bubble,
değil, o mantarı
like a
nasıl parmağına
ins-
taksın?
like we were in this little bubble of secrecy, and
Bu
it
şey
felt
kısmı,
like a warm
alüminyum kısmı,
glow,
mantarın
as we
üzerine
would
olan.
say. Just music
Deler.
and-
Sen de
and
haklısın.
kind of books that we both
Sonra
loved,
seni karam,
and
hani
poetry that
seni
we both
karım
knew
yapacağım
by
diye parmağına
heart,
takmış.
and it was it felt like a dream. It felt like absolute magic.
So while you're dating, I take it you're dating at this point, right?
Yeah,
While
sorry,
you're
if I didn't make that
while
clear.
you're
Yeah.
falling in love, you're also dating, right? Okay.
Yes.
Did there come a time early on that you ended up going to his Bahamas island?
Yes. So shortly after, you know, we
Demin Bahama'da
started dating
adası varmış.
October of
Bahsettiğim bu acı ne?
2011,
Öldüm.
and you know, as I mentioned, this bubble, you know, where he'd come over to my house and not leave for like 3 or 4 days, you know, just smoking cigarettes and playing music and reading poetry to me or painting me, or, you know, just talking. And then he would disappear. And there'd be just no way to get a hold of him, no way to contact him. At first, I didn't really think anything about it, but he disappeared.
Arada beraber
at
takılıyorlarmış,
one
sonra yok
point,
oluyormuş. Johnny Depp.
And then came back and said he was dealing with something,
Hiç
some health
konuşmuyorlarmış.
issue, and would I join him in the Bahamas? And I think that's when I learned he had an island. And I was on a trip with a friend of mine in Spain, and it was for the holidays, and I kind of rerouted my trip so I could come and land in LA landing in Miami instead of LA, so I could go and meet him on the island. And he had Keenan come and meet me on that trip, like in Miami. I get off one plane, get onto another, and go and join him on his private island. And I noticed he was drinking Beck's and tea, like lots of tea. And I didn't foolishly think anything of it. I just, you know,
Çok çay içince ne oluyor?
Seriously, I missed it before, but really, really loves tea. And we had this beautiful, I don't know, less than a week probably, trip in the Bahamas, a private island, beautiful sandy beaches. It's a scene that
Var bir şey herhalde.
you just don't. I had never experienced anything like that.
Ya da Rizeli.
It was a beautiful place, a beautiful time, and I fell head over heels in love with this man.
Yok çünkü şey dedi. Çok çay içiyor. Önceden nasıl fark etmeni bilmiyorum ama hani fark etmeliydim dedi. Çayla negatif bir şeyin bir bağlantısı var diye düşünüyorum. Çünkü hani çok içiyor, çok içiyor, çok içiyor da üzerine çok bastı.
While you were dating him in this early stage?
What I always do, I would be taking job to job to job, going from one movie to the next. Mostly not filming in LA. So weirdly, you live in LA to to go shoot on location in other places. So when I was in town, we would go back to this bubble, like insular bubble with beautiful, blaringly loud music and no one else and nothing else. And then, you know, I'd go off to work. And so would he. Well, eventually, yeah, he left to shoot Lone Ranger, I believe.
Okay. Now,
İşi olmadığı zaman Los Angeles'a geldi, onunla beraber kalıyorlarmış. Çok güzel bir an yaşıyorlarmış. Böyle hani kaosun içinde sakin olduğu, böyle daha mutlu müzik, kitap bilmem ne olduğu bir an oluyormuş. Lone Ranger'ı çekmeye gitmiş Johnny Depp. Lone Ranger da bok gibi film ha.
I believe I was shooting Machete Kills in Austin. I had a small part in a Robert Rodriguez film that shot in Austin. But you know, I think Johnny was shooting and then having some time off, and there was just a lot of travel, a lot of movement. So,
and so, what if any visiting did you do with Johnny while he was on his set for Lone Ranger, and where was he?
Well, he was filming all over the Southwest, and at some point I came to visit him, and on one of his locations, and I would stay in the house because I couldn't really, you know, occasionally I would leave with his security guards, but I didn't really have anything to do but visit him for a few days. So I'd cook and kind of stay at home and paint or whatever and wait for him to come home and have dinner ready. And we would have these little bubbles, but kind of scattered throughout the Southwest as he was filming. And at the time, Johnny had, you know, when I first arrived at one of his locations, it was the first time that Johnny told me that he had a health issue. Something with his liver, and that he wasn't.
Orada çekilirken
that's
de
why
işte
he was not drinking.
Amber'a da gelip yemek yapıyormuş, takılıyormuş beraber falan.
Like a lot of tea.
Ya ne çaymış ya.
And so,
karaciğer problemi var. Şöyle çok çay içiyormuş.
Testimony about boots. What, if anything, did you do to help Johnny with his boots?
Well, I mean, I suppose that I took off his boots, and it made an impression on him, and I was happy to, you know, anything I can do to show love, certainly how I felt about him. But if he wanted to take off his own boots, he certainly
Bu ne oluyor abi? Türk dizisine dönüyor bu,
Did
sikeceğim
you
yani.
buy Mr. Depp any knives during that time period?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
What if anything did you do with respect to knives during the time period you were with him in the Lone Ranger?
Objection leading.
What if anything?
Overruled.
Johnny had a thing for turquoise, and that eventually, you know, being in the Southwest, it can happen really quickly. I also too really love turquoise, and he has he loved knives. He loves a lot of things. When Johnny loves things, he does it a lot, and lots of it. So he had these daggers that he had given me that really, they were beautiful in design. And they're, you know, long, curved daggers. And he just talked a lot about knives, had a knife and gun collection, and was quite proud of it. And at some point, I don't really remember exactly when it was, but at some point I picked up what I thought was a really beautiful turquoise handled knife. And I had it engraved with a saying that Johnny would say to me all the time, which I, you know, thought was romantic, as funny as that is to say now.
And what was the expression, the saying?
Until death, hasta la muerte in Spanish.
Now, by the time that you're visiting Mr. Depp,
az önce gördüğümüz
during his shooting of
izlerken
Lone Ranger in the June through August
bir tane bıçak varmış.
2012 time frame.
What if any
relationship has he developed with
sevince
your
de
family?
çok fazla yapıyormuş. Gitar, bıçak bunlar işte.
Oh, well, starting really early on, Johnny was
bir tane bıçak görmüş Amber Heard bir yerde.
So kind,
bu bıçağı çok
so
beğenmiş.
generous
O da
to my
almış o
family,
bıçağı. Aldıktan sonra da üzerine bir tane yazı yazdırmış.
my mom and
Hasta la
dad,
muerte
really
yazdırmış. O da ölene
met my
kadar.
dad, and my dad's a big personality. He's a rowdy guy. And
az önce görmüştük 2 saat önce o bıçakta.
Johnny just all of a sudden, I had never noticed, you know, Johnny have a southern, all of a sudden Johnny had this southern accent and was really like buddies with him, and they really
Tabii bıçağı
seemed to
sıçmış
get
sonra.
along very well. They're, you know, just like instantly he was giving my dad gifts.
Benim
He gave
ses
him
kısık kaldı.
guns. He gave him
Arttırdım.
knives. They had this, I mean, Johnny just really just showered my dad. And my dad's a working man, you know.
Bunlar finalde barışırsa şaşırmaz.
Salt of the earth guy. And he was just like,
Ne
you know,
durumu?
floored. He's getting all
Yok ya.
these
Tavuk
amazing
köfte.
gifts and being invited to come on to these locations. And, you know, Johnny's this big movie star. And my dad was just like, you know, I think my dad would have married himself, not if I had. And
Ben evlenmeseydim
just
babam
instantly,
evlenirdi diyor Johnny Depp
he
de.
gave my mom jewelry, brought her out to come and see me while I was visiting Johnny on Lone Ranger in some part of the Southwest. I think it was Colorado.
Colorado'da dururken ben Johnny'yi şey yapıyordum.
Yeah, they were.
İsmi nedir? Ziyaret ediyordum. Annemi getirdi benim ziyaretime falan dedi. Kardeşinle ilişkisi nasıl diyor?
Came a little bit later as they got to know each other, but he did the same thing with my sister and just really found a bond with them that, you know, was it was, you know, he tried to do anything and everything he could to make them feel like special.
Özel hissettirmek için her şeyi yapmış.
My dad and my sister.
Kızıyla, kardeşiyle bile.
Mr. Depp form with your friends?
Arkadaşlarınla ne ilişkisi oldu Johnny Depp'in?
Well, Johnny's so generous and can be this really like overly generous almost, you know, like showering you with gifts and
yani Johnny eli çok açık, bonkör birisi diyor. Hatta bazen çok gereksiz bonkör oluyor.
You know, and he has access and means to really, you know,
bunu yapacak
yani
bunu yapacak tabii ki de parasına da şeye de sahip çünkü hani çok fazla şey veriyordu. Yakın arkadaşlarımı da yaptı.
And had a pretty strong support network with them, and he really just showered them with generosity and love and light, and invited them to come to these exotic places and flew people here and there. I mean, he's incredibly generous.
So going back to the filming of the Lone
Ben şu anda ne yapmaya çalıştıklarını anlamadım. Bu kadar öveceklerse evi herifi bir noktada inanılmaz gömmeye başlayacaklar.
Objection leading.
Yani benim tahminim şu anda böyle şişiriyorlar. Ondan sonra gerçek yüzünü gördüm, beni dövmeye başladı filan demeye başlayacak. At alacakmış. At olayı, hadi bakalım. Atla sıçtın yatağa.
Extravagant. There's no way I could accept that. That's also how will I take care of that? Or, you know, it's so extravagant. So I said no, of course. Eventually, he got a hold of my dad and worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to buy, and then showed me a picture of this horse and said, "It's yours."
İçinden
It's coming here.
Ben de aynı şeyi düşünüyorum. Hani şu anda konuşuluyor ama bundan sonra şey gelecek gibi hissediyorum. Yaşamaya devam ettikçe kötü tarafını gördüm ve hani şey yapamadım. Korktuğumdan ayrılamadım filan diyecek.
I had resisted for I think about like a month and a half or something of him kind of bringing up the idea and me saying that's a crazy gift. No, thank you. No, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't accept to. All of a sudden, I had a cult.
So let's take you through 2012 and your relationship. Could you just describe for the jury a little bit about how that relationship evolved?
Bunu direkt söylemesinden övüyor ki. Direkt gömerse niye çıktın o zaman noktası geliyor çünkü. 2012'den sonra ne oldu diyor.
It didn't become intense. It almost started that way.
Her zaman gergindi. Her zaman yüksek bir noktadaydı ilişki diyor.
When I was with him, you know, I felt that electricity in my body. I felt like butterflies. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't see straight practically. It was just, you know, I was head over heels in love, and he felt like that to me. He felt like
çok aşıktım diyor. Düz göremiyordum diyordu.
Like he was faking it. I felt like what we had. It felt like to me at the time there wasn't any love like that. You know?
Böyle bir aşk yoktu başka diyor.
And then he would.
Sonra bu üçü çok güçlü.
He started to kind of do this thing again where he'd disappear.
Sonra yine kaybolmuş.
He'd come back, and I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden
İçmeye
the
başladığında
behavior kind of
şey
started to
yapmadım.
go in line with the disappearing and
Sonra kaybolmayla
come back,
içme
and he just-
birleşmeye başladı.
And I'd say
Bana
something, and
değişik geliyormuş.
he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would. It was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like
Kıyafet ve çalışmam
I
asıl
found
problem.
myself trying
De
to
tartışmalarda diyor.
not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically.
Olabildiğince
I
bu
tried to,
test
you know, he would make these
görüntüleri
comments
falan
about,
şey yapmıyordu, konuşmuyordu.
you know, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, you know, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were, you know,
Kendini aktörlükle
fame hungry,
satıyorsun filan
you know,
demiş.
expletive, you know, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. Never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything
Aktör olmama laf ediyor.
time I was walking out of the house, he would ask me, "That's really what you're wearing, kid? Oh, I see. You know, I
Bunu mu
wore a
giyiyordun
dress to an
filan
event
demiş.
once, and
Etkinliğe bir elbise
I felt
giymiş.
beautiful in it." Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out, and I showed it him because
Ona Johnny'ye
it's a carpet,
göstermiş.
it's red carpet, so it's like, you know, publicized, and I kind of thought it was weird. He wasn't saying anything about it. You know, I left him to go do this red carpet, and I was like, "Did you see the?"
Kırmızı halıyı gördün mü?
the
Kırmızı halıya
event I
gitmiş
went
bu
to, you know,
kıyafet aldıktan sonra.
Basically, I felt pretty, and I thought, like, did you see that? You know, I wanted him to say something about that, I guess. And he said, well, this is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain
Konuşmayı
why he was
kesmiş
acting
bir ara.
different. He just kind of acted mad at me, didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was
Kıyafeti ve
an event to
etkinliği
support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and
Bir charity'ymiş bu.
I said, you know, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll
Bütün
remember
dünya
you.
gördü.
That's how
Seni
the
böyle
world will remember
hatırlayacaklar.
you. And I was like,
Bütün dünya gördü. Seni herkes
come
böyle
on. I mean,
hatırlayacak
it's like,
demiş.
but you know, I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that, and that's all they'll see you as. That's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. You know, my dress was low cut. I get it, it's low cut. But I felt, you know, I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore
Konuşulanları
that.
klan
I felt
savaşını
like,
kaybetmeye
how
başladı.
could I
Çok
have
streslendi.
made that
Evet,
choice?
evet.
Of course,
Yani
you know,
bayağı
so
bildiğin Johnny'nin
I started
avukatları
bleeding. I started
tepki verme
bleeding.
aşağıya bak
That made
demişler.
a lot of sense, of course. But it didn't stop with that. It was just, it was
Burada bitmemiş
clothing
bu
in
arada.
general. And when I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing.
Yani-
No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it.
Hiçbir zaman böyle çıkamazsın dememiş ama onun yerine bunu mu giyiyorsun dışarıya? O yüzden bu rolleri alıyorsun falan diye şeyi yapmış. Alttan kazmış.
At first, it was just to throw something, smash some things. He loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. Is what it started with. Glass. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer.
Bir şeyleri atmayı, patlamayı
And he just
severdi
threw
diyor.
this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me, and I remember thinking that it like very easily could have hit me.
Bir tane cam almış.
That
Ona doğru ona atmamış ama onun tarafından atmış. Yanında patlamış.
And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd
Horror kelimesini kullanmaya başlamış. En başta kullanmıyormuş, ondan sonra kullanmaya
then he would
başlamış.
hit the wall, and then he'd hit the wall really close to my head. You know, like when I'm standing there, you know, just hit the wall, screaming at me. But then he would disappear
Sonra tekrar kayboluyormuş.
and get
Nereye kayboluyor lan bu
sober, and
herif?
he'd come back and tell me
Ha, ondan sonra
that he was done drinking, he was over it.
içmeyi
Done,
bitirdim falan
cleaned himself
diyormuş.
up, he'd done it before, he'd do it
Rehabilitasyona
again.
gidiyormuş.
And
Okey
then we go
oluyormuş.
back to this like wonderful, like
Ondan sonra çok güzel bir
almost
hayat tekrar yaşıyorlarmış.
just unreal, like real, you know, but unbelievably nice, sensitive, kind, warm, generous.
Bu arada
interesting,
Johnny Depp'in
funny
öküz
man
gibi bir
that I
alkol
loved.
problemi olduğunu biliyoruz.
And
Aynı zamanda
he would
uyuşturucu.
Make me feel so loved, like I would feel so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was,
Ve çay.
you know, our
Ben hala
relationship
çayı
had started to
çözemedim.
develop in that first year.
Ben hala çayın olayını çözemedim. Yani
First time that he
çayı niye üzerine basıyor?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
Sana fiziksel olarak ilk vurduğu anı hatırlıyor musun dedi. Evet dedi.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so like insignificant.
Çok küçük bir şeymiş
I
gibi
will
geliyor
never
ama.
forget it.
Ama hiç unutmayacağım bunu diyor.
It changed my life. I was
Hayatımı
sitting
değiştirdi
on the
diyor.
couch.
Koltukta oturuyordum.
And
Burası
we
önemli,
were
o yüzden direkt
talking,
çeviriyorum.
we were having
Konuşuyorduk.
like a normal
Normal bir konuşma
conversation, you know,
yaşıyorduk.
just there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I
İçiyormuş.
didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table.
Kokain
I
kullanıyormuş.
realize it sounds weird, but it was like an actual
Galiba
vintage
kokain
jar.
kullanıyormuş.
But I didn't
Maşallah,
see him
Johnny Depp
at the time,
abim
so
de
I didn't
bayağı bir
really
kavanoz
factor that in. I
kokaini
just,
varmış.
You know, he's drinking and we're talking and there's music playing and he's smoking cigarettes and we're sitting next to each other on the couch.
Müzik
And
dinliyorduk,
I
sigara
asked him
içiyorduk, yan yana
about
oturuyorduk
the
falan.
tattoo he has on his arm.
Kolundaki dövmeyi
And to
sormuş.
me, it just looked like black marks. Like I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard
Yani
to
ne
read.
olduğunu bilmiyordum sadece, o yüzden
And I said,
sordum diyor.
what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino. And
Why not
I didn't
diyormuş.
see that. I thought he was joking because it didn't look like it said that at all. And I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking.
Buna gülmüş.
And slapped me across the face.
Sonra da Johnny de tokatlamış.
I laughed because
Murat da
I
gülmeye
didn't
devam
know what
etmiş.
else to do. I thought this must be a joke. This must be a joke because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke, but he didn't.
Onun da gülmesini bekledim, hani
He said,
şaka
"You think
olduğunu
it's so
söylemek
funny?
için.
You think it's funny, bitch. You think you're a funny bitch."
Bunun komik
Slapped me
olduğunu
again.
sanıyorsun. Bunun komik olduğunu düşünüyorsun deyip ondan sonra bir daha
It was
tokatlamış.
clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason. It seemed like, and I
Hiçbir nedeni
missed
yokken
the point.
tokat
It was
yani
that stupid.
o olayı kaçırdım
Second
diyor
slap, I
yani.
know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to
Hani
say
ilk
or do, so I
tokadı
just
öyle bir
stared at him.
anlamadım ki diyor,
I
hani
didn't say
çok
anything,
boş
I
bir
didn't
olaydan
react. I didn't move or
tokat yedim.
freak out or
diyor.
defend myself or
Ya haklı bu arada
say,
harbiden
"What are you
yani.
doing? You're crazy." I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he
Adam hiç
slapped
anısı
me
vardı
one more
oturtun.
time.
Abi istediği kadar anısı olsun yani. Birisi bir şey sordu diye tokat atmazsın. Özür dilerim ama.
I lose my balance. At this point,
Ay
we're sitting
mesela
next
çok
to each
şımardı
other
abone olmuş.
on the-
Canımsın.
edge of the
En iyi
couch,
abonem sen
or I
hoş
was on the edge of
geldin.
the couch.
Büyük ihtimal Johnny Depp hatırlamıyor bile bunu yaptığını. Katılıyorum.
And
Öküz
I'm
gibi içtiği
all of
için.
a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking. Because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before, and I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody.
Oradan geri dönemezsin diyor yani. Bunun gerçek olduğuna inanmak istemedim ama şaka olduğuna hala inanmak istedim. Çünkü eninde sonunda birisine vurduktan sonra bir şiddet olduktan sonra ilişkiden geri dönülemez diyor.
I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me.
O odadan çıktıktan sonra bana olan en iyi şeyin çöp olacağını.
I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. I was just looking at the dirty carpet trying to will myself to get up.
Çıkıp gitmedim işte hani o şeyi bulamamış kendisine, gücü bulamamış, halının üzerine durmuş ve beklemiş.
I stood up and I remember looking at him in the eye and just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying.
Sonra Johnny ağlamaya başlamış.
I had never seen an adult man cry. I didn't even really see my dad cry at my grandma's funeral.
Gerçekten komik bir durum. Kim haklı kim haksız anlayamıyorsun. İkisi de birbirine benzemiş. Yani zaten hani alkol problemi olduğu için Johnny'nin teknik olarak yapmadım demesi elde tutulur bir şey değil. Çünkü hatırlamıyor olabilir. Kadının yaptığını da biliyoruz. Kayıt var çünkü. Yani ikisi de ultra toksik yani.
But on his knees, and I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say. I just remember thinking that it was just, he was crying. He seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because right? That means it will happen again, no? You know, like I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car. I walked to the car.
Arabaya gitmiş, evden çıkıp arabaya gitmiş.
To not say, oh, it's okay or anything like that. I just didn't say anything.
Hiçbir şey dememiş. Bir cümle bile, bir kelime bile dememiş. Arabaya gitmiş.
And I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window. And I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, you know, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to know what I should do in this moment, because I was heartbroken. And I sat there for a long time, and I eventually turned the key and drove home.
Orada beklemiş, arabada bir uzun süre beklemiş. Ondan sonra anahtarı açıp ondan sonra eve gitmiş. Ondan sonra ne yaptım diyor.
I don't know. I don't remember what I did when I got home.
Eve gittikten sonra ne yaptım hatırlamıyorum diyor.
I went to my therapist.
Terapisine gitmiş.
I told her.
Objection, hearsay.
Nasıl hearsay bu?
I'll sustain it as to what she may have told her.
I went home and a few days later started getting, I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts from Johnny. you know, apologizing profusely. I mean, just, you know, he said, I'd rather cut my hand off than ever lay it on you or lay it upon you, you know, and he had that way of talking. It felt like poetry.
Evet, bir bu arada bak chatte şey görüyorum da chat elinde sonunda yani bu olayın her zaman da iki taraf olduğunu, yani evet hepimiz Karayip Korsanları'nı izledik, bilmem ne şey yapıyoruz, seviyoruz ama elinde tutan iki taraflı bir şey. Dümdüz şey yapmaya da gerek yok. Hani birisi %60 haksız haklı diye diğeri de %40 %100 haksız olmuyor. Yani ikisi de ultra toksik insanlar. Üzücü bir şekilde. Ya %50 mi bilmiyorum. Onu ben bilemem. Çünkü yani birisi hatırlamıyor, biri de yalan söyledi bir konuda. O yüzden hani nereden tutsan orada elinde kalıyor.
That it would never happen again. Of course, it would never happen again. That he'd put this thing away. He'd killed the fucker is what he said to me over and over again. I put that fucker away. I killed that monster. I'll kill it again. It's done.
Ondan sonra tekrar şey yapmışlar, konuşmuşlar. O canavarı öldürdüm, bir daha olmayacak. Kusura bakma. Öldürdüm o canavarı, bir daha çıkmayacak falan demiş. Ondan sonra güvenmiş. Sonra ilişkide kalmış.
Yeah, I did. I believed it, but you know, I believed it wouldn't. I believed that there was a line he wouldn't cross again, and that was it.
Geçmeyeceği bir çizgi olduğunu düşünüyordum ve onun da bu çizgi olduğunu düşünüyorum. Hani bir daha olmayacağını, bunu en azından tokat olayı olmayacağını düşünüyordum.
So you stayed, correct? You stayed in the relationship.
İlişkide kaldın, yes. Deyim diyor, evet diyor.
So, is this a good time?
You keep going a little longer, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
So, could you please describe for the jury the evolution of your relationship after that time?
Bu olaydan sonraki yani ilişkin nereye doğru evrildi falan diyor.
I don't know how long it was until things got bad again.
Ne kadar uzun süre oldu bilmiyorum ama tekrar yani ilişki bok oldu, toksik oldu diyor. Tekrar içmeye başlamış.
It was almost, you know, he'd start drinking again, the disappearing thing, the coming back. He'd come back like in the middle of the night.
Gecenin köründe benim evime gelirdi diyor.
And it would be unclear to me, you know, drunk. Often really drunk and
sarhoş olup olmadığını tam şey yapmam. Direkt beni suçlardı ama %100 suçlamazdı. Hani şey gibi, o kıyafet yorumları gibi. Kimdeydim? Niye bana mesaj atmazdın?
This is when I was at my place in Orange. Sometimes he would show up to catch me. Like that was a pretext for coming over, and by the time we were done talking, I would have thought
direkt mesaj atmazsa direkt evi basardı diyor.
And would go back to good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind.
Ben onu anlatmaya çalışıyorum. Sadece onun olduğunu, sonra sadece onu sevdiğimi diyor.
And then it would be something I said. Why did you say it that way?
Bir o şekilde söyledim falan diyordum.
I could guarantee that when couldn't guarantee, but 2 of those in a row, and when I came back, he was angry at me, you know, and I wouldn't necessarily
giderdim, gelirdim, bir baktım bana sinirli olmaya başladı. Ondan sonra bana yine bok atardı. Hani bana sonra en baştaki gibi
next to my head which is a constant at that time in
2012 gibi bir sinirli olduğunda içkisi içtiği zamanlarda kendisine değil ama hemen yanındaki duvara da yumruk atıyormuş bayağı.
I'd defend myself. I'd say, you know, that's crazy. You're wrong. I would never. The normal things.
Paso ona ihanet ettiğimi, başka aldattığımı söylüyordu. İttirirdi. Beni yere ittirirdi. Ben de kalkardım.
When I get back up, I'd look him in the eye. I made a point of getting up and looking him in the eye.
Ayağa kalkıp ben de direkt gözüne bakardım diyor. Kendime öyle savunuyordum diyor.
And he'd ask me if I wanted to go again and shove me back down.
Tekrar yok mu derdim Kaptan Amerika gibi.
Remember he hit me in the face when I denied having an affair with my ex-wife, my ex-partner at the time.
Eski karımla aldattığımı söylemişti. Reddettim. Reddettikten sonra suratıma vurdu. Tokat atmış.
And I said, Johnny, you hit me.
Johnny suratıma vurdun.
Just hit me.
Vurdun bana demiş.
I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up 1783, please?
Şimdi
What number again?
1783.
I'm sorry, what number?
Defendants
Eski karısı kim?
1783.
Eski karısı.
1783, thank you.
Johnny Depp'in değil. Amber Heard'ın eski karısı.
Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell us what it is?
It's a picture of my face with a note that Johnny left for me by the coffee. Typically is where we'd leave notes like that.
And does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
It was one of those scenes.
Bu bir fotoğrafmış, şimdi gösterecekler, daha fotoğrafı göstermeden bir fotoğrafmış. Fotoğrafta Johnny'nin bıraktığı bir tane not varmış. Kitaplara not filan bırakırlarmış.
It escalated quickly, fast, and it became.
Amber, let me ask it a different way. Is this a picture of you? Is it an accurate picture of you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of 1783.
Your Honor, we have an objection. May we approach?
Aha, objectleyecekler şeyi. Kanıta object karşı gelecekler. Johnny'nin avukatları. Mikrofon kapandı. Johnny klan savaşını hala bitiremedi. 3 telefondan bakıyor, baksana herif. Tek başına klan olmuş herif. Ama şey çok garip. Yani ben bunu ilk kendi Johnny Depp kendisi de tanık sandalyesine otururken de şey yapmıştım. Abi milyon dolarlık adamsın. Bok gibi param var. Termosuna bak. Ustam. Yani yani herif sanki. Amerika'da orta sınıf işe gidiyorum. Arabanın üzerine koydum. Arabamın altına aldım. Aile arabamdan o tahttaki bir tane şeyden gidiyorum. Ustam. Dit. Çay içiyor.
Would you please describe for the jury some of the cycles you had with Mr. Depp through 2012?
Object dediler lan. Kanıtı sokturmadılar.
2012, the violence was pretty, relative to what it became, pretty, slapping, backhanding. Well, it went from this eggshell kind of, you're walking on eggshells, nothing you're doing is kind of right, but you don't know what you're doing wrong.
2012'den sonra coşmuş olay diyor.
Clearly, but it was unclear within the scope of an argument what I was defending myself against. So it would shift from a rumor he had heard that I was with a friend, or I had been photographed standing too close to a male person.
Bir erkeğe çok yakın olursan fotoğrafta kıskanıyormuş. Bir arkadaşından bir duyum alırsa, bilmem ne şey yaparsa. Yani ne kadar olay olduğunda geriliyormuş. Bağırıyormuş Amber orada. Bütün ortalığı yıkıyormuş.
The worst, because I kind of always felt like I had done, I had to defend myself. I had to tell him, so he didn't think these things were true. And sometimes, he would shift accusations while I'm trying to dispel one accusation.
Bir tane duyduğu şeyi öyle olmadığını kanıtlarken ikincisini söylüyormuş, üçüncüsünü söylüyormuş. Hiçbir şey sakinleştirmiyormuş onu.
I remember in my apartment in Orange, he would grab me by the hair or he'd grab me by the arm.
Saçından kolundan
Pull me into
çekiyormuş,
him,
kendisine
scream
doğru
at me that way,
çekiyormuş,
he'd
sonra
smash things
bağırıyormuş.
around me, then he would smash things very close to me.
Kendi
And then he
yakınındaki ve
just hit me.
etrafındaki şeyleri kırıyormuş. Sonra
And
suratına,
it started
sonra
with
kendisine vuruyormuş.
slapping, and it
Tokatla
got
başlamış ilk önce.
to be like repetitive slaps where he'd hold me in a position and slap me multiple times.
Bir yerde sabit
in a
tutup
row.
ondan sonra birkaç kere tokatlıyormuş.
Then it would be, eventually I later would either push him off of me or I'd try to hit his hands away from me. I'd try to, not in 2012 so much. At that time,
2012'de
I
değil
was
ama
mostly,
sonra ben de uzaklaştırma çalışıyordum
my
falan
defense
diyor.
was, I'd go some other place.
Başka bir yere
I don't know
giderdim
how
diyor.
to describe that. It was, I'd focus on something else. I'd stand up, look at him, try to stand up to him that way. Later, I adopted other kind of strategies to deal with it. But at the time, in 2012, it was, he'd have this
Oğlum,
blowout,
kanında
and
dur bir
then
dakika.
he would leave.
Sonra gidiyormuş,
disappear,
kayboluyormuş.
and I'd be committed to not talking to him. I'm done with this relationship. I can't take it anymore. I said that so many times. And then he'd come back, clean and sober.
Sonra geri gelirmiş,
He had a chip.
alkolü
I didn't have any
bırakmış.
chips, but he would say, I've gone to meetings.
Şeye gittim, çip
I
aldım,
have
artık içmiyorum.
a sober companion now.
Sober companion var
I'm
diyormuş.
doing this program, I'm reading this, I'm doing this. And he was done with drugs and alcohol for good this time.
Alkolü, uyuşturucu bıraktım
Come back in
diyormuş.
my life and
Sonra tekrar geliyormuş
combination of
hayatına.
being sober and having gone through this horrible thing where I felt like my heart ripped out of my chest, like a relationship ending is hard, I think, for anyone, but ending under that circumstance is really painful. And so when he'd come back, it would almost feel like a solution to that, and it would feel great, and we would be
Ondan sonra
good
şey
again,
çözdüğümüzde
and we'd
yaşıyorum. Çok güzel hissediyordum.
be
O da
extra nice and extra apologetic and extra loving.
her
It just
şeyde özür diliyor. Her şeyde çok iyi davranıyor. Her şeyde çok sevecen davranıyor ve yine mutlu oluyorduk diyor.
And
Johnny zaten işte mental reset atıyormuş Johnny
eventually
kendisine.
word, and then I'd see him drinking again.
Sonra tekrar içmeye
When I
başlıyormuş.
started to get upset, noticing the pattern.
Sonra paternini
of
fark
the
ettiğinde
violence going
yine
with the
şiddet, alkol
drinking
el ele
drugs,
gitmeye
and
başladığında da
then he started sneaking it. So
gizli
it
gizli
became
içmeye
less clear, and
başlamış.
I'd have to look for clues.
Sonra
That's what he was on, so I
tiyolara
just
bakmaya
knew how to
çalışıyordum. Hani
react,
içip
you know?
içmediğine.
Johnny on speed is very different from Johnny on opiates. Johnny on opiates very different from
Farklı adam da maşallah her uyuşturucuyu çekmiş yani. Speed kullanmış, opit kullanmış, kokain kullanmış, adderall kullanmış, koilit kullanmış. Bu ne ustam adam da yani. Bir de kadın da şey söylüyor. Her uyuşturucu da farklıymış. Hani tepkisi. Yani birisinde mesela mutlu, yani onu söylemedi de birisinde mutluyken diğerinde sinirli bilmem ne falan, onları öğrenmeye çalışıyormuş.
I think she can
Objection,
say if
hearsay.
I think she can say if she told anybody.
As long as she doesn't say what she said.
Right, right. So did you
Başkasına söyledin mi bunları diyor.
Yes, I did.
Evet söyledim diyor. Kime
I
söyledin
told my
dedi.
therapist.
Terapisine söylemiş.
I eventually told my mom.
Annesine söylemiş.
let's go ahead and take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 150. 150.
Evet abi çok şükür 25 milyar milyon canımsın. En iyi haberlerim sana hoş geldin.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay.
Ah. Hearsay diye buna da object dedi. Duyum diye. Mikrofon açıldı geri söz. Aa kapandı geri. Gergin bir an. Royalty çok çabuk 23 milyarmış. Ibuga 30. ay. The Princess 12. ay. Bloody Knife 9. ay. Man with Yankee 3. ay. Tiryaki çok şey 21 milyarmış. MLKYZ çok şey 19. ay için. Kültür Dağ Adamı 24. ay. Evet. Johnny'nin oyun crashlemiş. Supercell introsu duyulmasın diye kapatıyorlar mikrofonu. Doğru dedi USD. Hearsay ne demek? Duyum gibi. Yani bir duyumu kullanacaklar, duyumu kullanamazsın diye şey yapıyorlar, şikayet ediyorlar. Yani kanıtlı değil gibi. Yani kulaktan dolma bilgi kanıtlanamaz bir şey gibi. Kaynak götüm gibi düşünün. Evet. Bu arada sakinleşmişken hala chat'i takip etmeyenler var. Bu ne rezillik ilk önce. 2. Hava bok gibi soğuk. O yüzden merch zamanı. Evet. Ünlem merch. Reklamlar. Hashtag et. Ama ben satıyorum. O yüzden hashtag et değil. Ya böyle şok olursunuz. Oğlum bu arada ben hoodie ile üşüdüm bugün. Yarın mont giyeceğim büyük ihtimalle. Bir de yarın spoilersız büyük ihtimalle şeyi biraz konuşurum. Yarınki yayında. Doktor Strange'i az biraz konuşacağım. Spoilersız konuşacağım ama. Onu da söyleyeyim. Sana F1.22 gelmiyor. Ben istemedim. Gerek yok. Oyun full çıktığında oynarız. Böyle çok mümkün değil. Ya konuşuruz ya. Ya iyi mi kötü mü falan olarak konuşurum. Cuma çıkmıyorum. Ben yarın izleyeceğim. Sonra spoilerlı konuşuruz. Pazartesi spoilerlı konuşuruz. Pazartesiye kadar genellikle çok spoilerlı konuşmayı sevmiyorum. Yani genellikle şeyi sevmiyorum. Birkaç gün beklemeyi tercih ediyorum. Sen nasıl izliyorsun? Ön gösterime gideceğim. Ne kadar uzun sürdü lan bu şey. Ama tekrardan dediğim gibi.
Why
Number
did you decide to confide in your mother?
Niye annene yani söyleme gereği duydun bu problemleri?
I think I felt safe.
Güvende
talking
hissettim
to
annemle.
My mom because I knew that she understood these dynamics and
Bu dinamikleri
she wouldn't
anladığını
judge
biliyorum. Beni
me for staying with him.
yargılayacağım, yani onunla
for
kaldığım
loving
için yargılamayacağını biliyordum.
Even though this was happening and was happening to me,
Bana olsa bile yargılamayacağını, şey
I knew she
yapacağını,
would understand.
anlayacağını biliyordum.
When approximately did you start confiding in your mom about your issues with
Ne
Mr.
zaman
Depp'in?
anlatmaya başladın annene bu şeyleri?
Objection, hearsay, compound.
Hani fotoğrafı kanıt. Hearsay olduğu için galiba reddettiler.
When did you start confiding in your mother about the abuse you were suffering at the hands of Mr. Depp?
Ne zaman anne şey yapması, aynı soruyu başka türlü sordu
I was
ki
confiding in her
sorabilsin.
from the very beginning about the abuse, the psychological abuse, the kind of control, the disappearing, the not knowing where he was.
En başından itibaren konuşmaya başladım. Hani bu gitmesi, uzaklaşması bilmem ne. En başından beri konuşuyordum bunları da.
The fact that I was secret, I had to hide.
Gizli olduğum, kimseye, arkadaşlarıma söyleyemem.
With him for a long time because he told me everyone would blame me for the split with him and his partner, so I had to kind of sneak around and kind of get brought to his house, typically in a secretive way, and then he'd come to mine in a secretive way. And
Gizli bir şekilde birbiriyle buluşuyorlarmış ilk şey zamanında, tabii onları söylüyor hala.
I confided with her at the very beginning on that sort of thing, and then later opened up to her about some of the violence. I did it.
Sonra şiddetleri
gently.
hakkında anlatmaya başladım.
First, I just wanted to have someone to talk to about how scary it was.
Ne kadar korkunç olduğunu anlatacak birisini aradım sadece diyor.
The uncontrolled violence, the rage that this man had, and why it was
Objection,
pointed
Your
at
Honor.
me.
Hearsay. May we approach, please?
Allah bir daha sinirlendi. Hadi bakalım. Yine hearsay deyip çektiler aşağıya. Ben burada nasıl hearsay dediklerim bilmediğim için hukuk şey olayını bilmediğim için burada neye göre hearsay diyorlar onu bilmiyorum. Ha çünkü kendi şeyini anlattığı için hani nasıl duyum oluyor? Yani o kısım biraz
We're going to go ahead and take our 15-minute afternoon break, so please do not talk
öyle
about the
arasında
case or
girdik.
any outside research. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Johnny Depp kazanmış savaşı şeyden. Clash of Clans'da kazandı arkadaşlar. Helal olsun Johnny.
And Ms. Heard, just a reminder that now that you're on the stand, you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody to include your attorneys, okay? All right, so we'll be back. Let's make it 3:45, okay?
Thank you.
Şöyle bir şey şu anda şeyde tanık şeyinde olduğu için kendi avukatları dahil kimseyle konuşamazsın kendi şeyini bu tanıklığını dedi. Bir yasal forumdaki kulaktan olma kanıtlar içeriği elden doğrudan kanıtlamak ama işte diyorum ya. Bir dakika. Hearsay is defined as an out of court statement made in court to prove truth of the matter asserted. These out of court statements do not have to be spoken about, but they can also. Ama ne bileyim ya. Bilmiyorum yani o şeyi ya o şey kısmına hearsay'in nasıl olduğunu ben şey yapabilmiş değilim hala. Ya onun hala ben hearsay varsayımda bulunamazsın da kendi anlattığı, kendi yaşadığı ve annesine anlattığı şey nasıl duyum oluyor? O yani varsayım oluyor. O kısmını şey yapamıyorum. Bitmedi. Ara verdiler 15 dakika. O kısmını şey yapamadım. Hala çözemedim. Mesela ben diyorum ki Batu'ya bunları şöyle söyledim. O da öyle söylediğim bir kanıtı yok bu söyleme karşı. Ha tamam şimdi oldu anladım. Anladım bak Erkan güzel anlattı. Batu'ya ben diyorum ki Batu'ya bunları böyle söyledim. Yani öyle söyledim bir kanıtı yok bu yüzden de hearsay oluyor. Anladım. Okey. Ara 50 saat. Ha 30 dakika mı ara? Çok uzunmuş. O zaman Baking Simulation. Let's go.